Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal and you are watching the Mojo Story. India has renewed the extradition request to Canada of Arshdeep Gill alias Arsh Dalla, who is a proclaimed terrorist and an alleged leader of Khalistan terrorist force. In fact, he is the one who succeeded Hardeep Singh Nijjar and is wanted by India for over 50 cases of murder, extortion, and terrorism. Dalla was recently arrested after being injured in a shooting incident. Now, Canada has previously denied similar requests from India. In the past, India has been making those requests, but Canada has turned them down. What is really happening here? We're joined from Canada by Daniel Bordman, who's a journalist. Welcome to Mojo Story, Daniel. What has been the Canada's response to India's requests so far about individuals like Arsh Dalla? India has reiterated that he should be extradited and he's a terrorist and be sent back to India. How has Canada responded to such requests so far?
Mostly complete radio silence. Now, this story did break on one news station here, CTV News. They claim to have broken the story and got the exclusive, like, I don't know, 3 days after every Indian media outlet reported all the details. But still, credit where credit is due. It's the only Canadian news station that did that. And they did cover it. They did show video of him committing murders in India, which was good because it did show that there is reason for India to be concerned about his consistent murdering sprees, which are a problem. And their conclusion was, though, is they brought in a CSIS member to say that, this is a sign of foreign interference because there must be someone in our intelligence agencies linked to RAW or the Indian government to leak this, and this is a security leak. It's more like, well, you arrested a terrorist and someone found out. Like, this isn't like the craziest intelligence this isn't pager operation. Like, this isn't
Right.
this isn't India sneaking in a bunch of pagers to Canada and some coordinated thing. This is like, no, a terrorist got injured in a massive shootout that was very public in a country where shootouts are not a thing that happens very often because we think ourselves as a very gun control-esque society. So when a massive shootout happens and then a terrorist actually gets injured in the shootout, there's like 100 people who could find out about it. The police report, you don't need to be a crack like you could probably open source find out who was injured in this. Like, it could have been an RAW agent sitting in Brazil who was on his computer and like figured this one out. This didn't require like the Mossad team from the movie Munich, or again the pager operation, or anything overly complicated. Like, this was a man injured in a public shootout who has over 50 very serious cases against him in India, and now faces some very serious weapons charges here in Canada. If he is found guilty of these weapon charges, you could look at 1, 2, maybe weeks, maybe a whole month in jail. And that's pretty serious in this country. Like, he could spend 15 minutes behind bars, before he's made mayor of Mississauga or something. So, I can understand why the Indian government wants him, because Canada's legal system is an absolute joke, especially for hardened terrorists. So he'll spend 15 minutes in jail likely. Canada will say, well, we put him in jail. We took this very seriously. Now he's a human rights activist. Look, he made a Taylor Swift friendship bracelet in jail. So he went to jail, which was very bad. We are now flying him to a Taylor Swift concert because he made a friendship bracelet. And now he's part of, now he's the new leader of, he'll be in the next liberal leadership race or something. Who knows? It'll be him, Melanie Jolie, or, like Osama bin Laden's kid, who's running around Afghanistan right now. So this is Canadian politics.
It's very, very, very strange and bizarre it sounds. But you spoke something about his arrest, the way that he was arrested. Can you give us some more insights, the way that he was arrested? What happened? There was a shootout, and then he moved to the hospital where from that arrest took place, and then there was a raid at his home where weapons were found.
Yeah, I mean, like that's how things work here in Canada. Like, if you get shot and if you go into a hospital with a bullet, it makes sense. Like, this is a part that makes sense. Like, right, there are parts of the Canadian legal system that have stopped functioning. But the general concept of, if you're in the hospital and someone comes in with a bullet wound and it's reported to the police.
Yeah.
They take you down. So they felt like, again, in order to get treatment here, he was wounded. And then because he had bullet wounds, the police had to look into it. And because he had all these different charges with him, and he's a gangster, right? Sorry, community activist, student. He's an international student and community activist. Sorry. So of course there's a giant weapons cache at his house. And they found that, and the evidence was part of a massive shootout. So, it's kind of in the hands of the Canadian justice system. Like, honestly, there's two things. Like, they could drag this on for over a year until the Trudeau government's out of power, and then they don't really care what happens, right? It's not like Trudeau and Jagmeet have any sort of compulsion to, like, how will this affect Canadian national security and integrity going forward? No one really cares in power about the long-term implications of their actions. So they might just punt and draw the clock out past the year, then leave it for the Conservative government to deal with. Or they might just sort of expedite this through the courts and kind of just like throw him in jail for the year and say, look, see, we dealt with it. He's in Canadian jail. What do you want? Because they really don't want this story getting out. Like, again, they don't want the story getting out because he's Hardip Singh Nijjar's replacement of the Khalistan Tiger Force. And they don't want to admit that Hardip Singh Nijjar was the head of the Khalistan Tiger Force, which is not Babar Khalsa, which we list as a terrorist organization. And then you have to start showing the pictures of our arch plumber Nijjar with AK-47s and talking about why he loves suicide bombings and kill this guy, kill that guy, destroy India, and kill. We don't want to show the videos of Hardip Singh Nijjar going kill, because we want to play up this whole narrative that he was this innocent community activist, leading a drum circle for Khalistan, and everyone was just like playing the bongos peacefully and spiritually, and then evil big bad India had them murdered because Modi is Trump or something. That's what we want to say. But then once you start saying, okay, what's the Khalistan Tiger Force? So if you're wondering, it's a terrorist organization that has a picture. Its mascot is a lion. So this is the level of people we're dealing with here in Canada. I can't believe this movement, as stupid as it is, where the Khalistan Tiger Force literally has an insignia that is a lion with a mane. These people are mentally challenged, all of them. Their story makes no sense, but they run Canadian foreign policy. They just let them run every foreign
because
policy.
they have infiltrated into the system at different levels. But if you connect the dots, as you were saying, it takes one back to Nijjar. India says that Dalla is a terrorist, but how significant is his role in the criminal and terror networks within Canada? And how are such networks dealt with by the system there? Are they monitored? Are they dismantled? What is the way that Canada responds to such systems existing within that country?
Mostly stick our head in the sand, sometimes stick our fingers in our ears, close our eyes, and scream la 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 la. That's the primary response to serious accusations like terrorism. And then occasionally, like, there are a few functioning intelligence officers in the country. Like, it's not like every intelligence officer is compromised. All the politicians are. And politically, the RCMP and CSIS are compromised at the top end. But there are solid RCMP and CSIS agents. So if you do get some good RCMP and CSIS agents and they do some work here, they can do some stuff on gangs. And occasionally you can get an arrest here or there. And there was like the major drug bust that happened. And now there's a lot more social pressure to this because, 2 years ago, I don't think Arsh Dalla would have been arrested, even with the bullet wounds and all this stuff, because it's just like, and then it would have been Khalistan, and someone would have gotten on the phone and said, okay, just drop this because we don't want to be racist. But the Liberal government is facing such criticism for its soft on crime approach, and even, right, the soft on crime approach is now reaching Liberal voters. And the base of the Liberal Party and like the driving intellectual force of the Liberal Party is, remember, like white upper middle class people in the suburbs and metropolis. So when the rich professionals, the people, they can usually live disconnected from the reality of their opinions, right? You can say, oh, we need to be more woke and blah 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 blah. you have a 6-figure salary, you're kind of above it. You can be a lawyer. Okay, I'll put up pronouns on my emails and the whatever. And that's like the extent of it. It's like you never, this hyperinflation stuff, like you call like the people who could Uber Eats their way through the pandemic is kind of that class of like, oh, we're all in this together. You have a nice house, Uber Eatsing is like, okay, whatever. I make $250K a year. I'm saving the world from COVID, right? Well, now, like the justice minister had his own car stolen 4 times off his own driveway. The justice minister, right? So we have like a multi-billion-dollar car theft industry because there was no law and order in our country, just none, absolutely none. It was just a good business to get into because there was no, like, you could just steal a car and like make 10K, and the risk was minimal because the cops wouldn't chase you. If they did catch you, you'd be out on bail the next day because we don't keep anyone on bail. And you saw like the way Canadian crime now works is like, yeah, there are some turf wars, but a lot of it is like sort of an oligarchy or like a mixture of all the different. So like the CCP, the Khalistanis, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Russians, like all the bad guys are kind of in bed with each other to make sort of like a corporate mega international crime spree. And that's how you have these massive ports in Montreal and in Quebec where you could have just truckloads. Like how do you get boatloads of stolen cars out of the country? Like you need widespread corruption at the ports, the unions, in the mafia, international terrorist organizations cooperating through it. Like Hezbollah played a very big role in the car, still does in our economy, in all the cars going away. So it wasn't until, like, again, it became so public that people are talking about it, that it damaged the liberal brand, that upper middle class people who could usually, again, live completely free of the consequences of their beliefs. Well, their beliefs started to come into their driveway as people are just like, okay, you have nice cars, they're my car now. And the Toronto police how did the police try and stop the car theft epidemic? What was plan A? They told people, leave your car keys outside your house. That way, when people come, they'll just steal your car and won't break into your house too.
Right. Unbelievable.
Police said this.
It sounds totally unbelievable what you're saying. But what you also said that maybe 2 years ago, this man would not have been arrested at all. But because the focus is on this case and it's been in spotlight for such a long time now, for many months now, the system is left with no other choice but to take some action. But that does not mean that he will be extradited to India.
No, I wouldn't expect an extradition because then that would give into the Indian narrative in a way, and that's just something Trudeau's not going to do in his final year of office, is admit he was wrong. And like, he could have, we could have a sort of a come to the middle moment here. Like I think there's legitimate grievance. Like I have legitimate grievance on India accusing our border security agency of being involved in Khalistani crime without the evidence. Like again, you want to accuse India of murder, you need evidence. Like, again, I'm totally with India on their thing of like, where's the evidence if the prime minister is going to go up in parliament and accuse the Indian government of being part of some conspiracy, and then it's hard up saying Nijjar? Like, what are we doing? This is crazy, right? On the other hand, you have, a border security agency who, and I mean, I've read the CBC article. It kind of looks like this guy's uninvolved with Khalistan. Like, I read the CBC article. I don't trust the CBC. I don't trust Evan Dwyer. I know they have every reason to lie. I've seen them lie before. I have zero trust to the people who wrote this article. But I read that article, and it seems like our guy is innocent. And the reason it looked like, it's so crazy in Canada, like it looks like the actual instance of foreign interference committed by India was to go after this border security guard. And the reason why I think he's innocent is the Canadian government doesn't really care. It looks like they don't really care about this border security guard because he's actually not a Khalistani. Because if he was an actual Khalistani involved in mass murder, we'd probably be going to DEFCON 1 to defend him. But you can hear the disappointment in the CBC's article as they're going through. And this guy's just describing himself as like, I'm a normal Canadian guy. I think all this other stuff is crazy. Like, you're crazy. India's wrong. Canada's like, Khalistan's wrong. Just leave me the F alone. I don't want, like, he doesn't sound like a Khalistani. Like, I know how Khalistanis defend themselves. And, I mean, I know the CBC. The CBC, like, they're so lefty and crazy. It sounds like they usually want to go into this guy's house and see Khalistan flags everywhere and a picture of him holding Hardip Singh Nijjar's head. And there's a little Hindu girl in a cage in the corner, and he's just whipping her, saying, "We will destroy India." And then he could go in and say, oh my God, the evil Indian government's just mad at this guy. You can't have a picture with a terrorist anymore. And just because he, commits kidnapping doesn't mean he's a bad guy. But he was actually like, this guy looks like he had nothing to do with it. But again, the Canadian government seems to not care about this incident because it looks like this was just like a regular Canadian citizen. And the other thing is, like, it's so weird that, like, if we actually go after India for this instance of what looks like foreign interference and go after that and set some rules there, like, the reason why I don't think we're going to do anything is because we don't actually want to do anything about actual foreign interference. Because once we start doing things about actual foreign interference to protect actual Canadian citizens, it's going to lead back to China and then Iran and then Pakistan and then it goes back to the Liberal Party and the NDP, right? Then we're back at Justin and Jagmeet. So the whole all justice is inverted in this country, and it's crazy. And like the only thing I think Arsh Dalla will be kept off the streets for the next year is because India will start slamming Trudeau and be like, hey, this is hard to like, it's the narrative. So whatever benefits the ruling party, that's what the security agencies do now. And it's not to say that everyone in them is corrupt, but it is to say that the Prime Minister's office has a history of putting their fingers on the levers of different levels of Canadian society, and has done that with our security agencies when it comes to politics. So in the final year of Trudeau, where he's a lame duck anyway, why wouldn't he, again, continue to, and if he gets found guilty of manipulating the security agencies on behalf of his own personal interest, he goes to the Ethics Commission hearing. And then if he found guilty at the Ethics Commission hearing, he could be fined another $500. Maybe they'll double it. Maybe he'll be fined $1,000 for for corruption of our security agencies. Okay, and he has a $400 million slush fund from his green energy stuff. So I'll take some money from his multi-million-dollar slush funds to pay a $1,000 fine. And that's what you get for corrupting our intelligence agencies as the active prime minister. He's already shown that he's willing to pay a $500 fine to embezzle hundreds of millions of dollars and corrupt Canadian institutions. So, like, why wouldn't he do it again?
Daniel, I was just thinking that it's been more than a year now since Justin Trudeau stood up in the parliament and said that agents of the government of India are responsible for the killing of Hardeep Nijjar. We've seen so many developments taking place in last more than a year. There is a large Punjabi community in Canada. How do these cases impact the larger Indian diaspora, particularly the Punjabi communities in Canada? Obviously, it cannot be separated from the two, because this entire case of Khalistan, the way that these radical elements are taking out protests, demonstrations, beating up worshippers in temples, and then we say that the two countries, the relation between the two countries have hit a rock bottom now.
Yeah, I mean, they're a rock bottom now, but I will tell people in India, never underestimate Justin Trudeau's ability to be overestimated, okay? It can get worse, okay? He can make things worse. There is no bottom, and if you think it's rock bottom, like this guy is like a sort of industrial level excavator, we can go lower, okay? Our relationship can get worse over the next year. Have faith in the prime minister. But in terms of the Punjabi community, like, no, it's really bad. Like that, again, when you do this kind of stuff, because then it pits the Punjabi community against the rest of the Indian community, right? It pits itself. The most dangerous thing is like the internal fighting, the Khalistanis versus non-Khalistanis. It puts incredible stress on these communities to be associated with stuff like this. And you have radicalization going on. You have counter radicalization. You have fights. I mean, you have the Canadian public starting to wake up to this, like seeing videos of Khalistanis claiming it's their country and go back to Europe and England to the white people. It's like it's so crazy that you don't want an entire community to be stained with the legacy of these wacky Khalistanis, and that's what no one wants. But with the current leadership of Justin and Jagmeet, who seem hell-bent on propping up Khalistan as the defining element of the Punjabi community, it's hard not to see how the community gets tarred with this long term,
Right.
because
Right.
again, all the leaders that our elected leaders are propping up are lunatics, are absolute lunatics, screaming about nonsense, who've claimed
Right.
to be here for 50 years, but they have a thicker Indian accent than you do. And this doesn't get lost on Canadians. When the former leader of the Work Sikh organization is talking about how we can't deport student visa holders and they can all claim refugee status, and I've been here for 50 years. You can't, like, you have been here for 50 years and you can't speak English properly? What is this? Like, this gets a lot of Canadians like mad, rightfully so. Like,
Right.
integrate for God's sakes. Like, I'm not saying you have to speak perfect flawless English, but if you've been here for 50 years and you sound like you just got off the boat from the Punjab region, that's a problem, right? It shows you're just living in these isolated communities where you speak Punjabi all day and you don't need to speak English. And that's like, people can, like, innately people sense that and they know, oh, that's a sign that we have ethnic enclaves in Canada. And when you have ethnic enclaves, stuff like this can fester in it, right? When you have ethnic enclaves that don't mix, you can pump in like Punjab, like Khalistan can take over Punjabi language radio, Punjabi language this, and in Punjabi centers and make it Khalistan. And you have these enclaves in Surrey that have been turned into like the world capital of Khalistan. And it's a problem.
No,
And when,
it's very ironical, Daniel. You talk about those enclaves and these Khalistani elements there. Even Justin Trudeau said a few days ago that there are Khalistanis in Canada, but not all Sikhs are Khalistani. The fact is, in India, there's hardly any movement called as Khalistan as of now. In Indian Punjab, it does not exist at all. And it is very ironical that we're seeing these separatists, these extremists, being so active and vocal in Canada and being given a free run to do what they want to do, so much so that they can take out rallies that glorify the killers of a former Indian prime minister.
yeah, like this is like the self-inflicted problem of this is the Trudeau philosophy come full circle. And wider, it's the Barack Obama critical race theory. Okay. Obama is like the first critical race theorist and critical theorist in general to sort of gain power. And he gained power on this sort of unifying message of peace and harmony in 2008, but he came with a very insidious agenda, which was racial divisiveness on these critical race theory elements. And it's been pushed in our institutions last, the 21st century. It's sort of seen the push of critical theory into our institutions, and this is the final end game here, and what it leads to when you get this type of thinking. And it's the perfect definition of Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh think about things is critical race theory and victimhood and this and that. So here you have a terrorist ideology movement that has been finished in India, but has been allowed to grow and fester in Canada. Why? Because it's purely sort of adopted this critical theorist element to it, right? You see Jagmeet Singh, the big proponent of it, is from the NDP, the far left party in Canada. They've done, I mean, part of it, their success, like part of the Khalistani success is they work very closely with the Muslim Brotherhood in the West. Like they're an auxiliary force of the Muslim Brotherhood. So any progress the Muslim Brotherhood makes, the Khalistanis also make, and vice versa, right? And they do very good interfaith together. This is where they learned, right? So the Muslim Brotherhood would come in, and sometimes, at the beginning of the 20th century, there'd be some anxiety, right? We're in a post 9/11 world. Are these radical Islamists and all this? So they learned to come in with the Khalistanis because it showed, okay, look, we're for racial harmony. Look, this guy's wearing a turban. We're wearing a thing. Like, we're both for racial harmony. And it was an easy thing to, oh, wow, this guy. And, in the interfaith circles, if you're a Jew or a Christian or whatever, you go, oh, wow, like, oh, this nice Muslim community is bringing in another community with us, the Sikh community too. Great, a 2-for-1, more interfaith. Stupid interfaith has never worked on anything, right? If you ever talk, I've been in interfaith meetings with interfaith leaders. It's like, I breathe air, you breathe air. Yes, we eat food for dinner. You eat food for dinner. We're the same. Now, let's not discuss any major issues. It's basically your mom makes food, my mom makes food. Wow. Oh, we don't do photosynthesis. We actually have to ingest the nutrients to survive. We're the same. Like, nothing serious addressed. But you have these Khalistani Muslim Brotherhood access, and they've been working together, right? So they infiltrated together, and from this, right, the Islamophobia, the Muslim Brotherhood very, very clearly in bed with the the far left, right? A lot more. You see this in the Palestine movements, right? Where in Arabic, it's we need to kill the Jews to create a global caliphate, kill, 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 rape, 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 more killing, more raping, caliphate all day, caliphates for me, caliphates for you, caliphates for everyone, death to everything. In Arabic. In English, Israel's a settler colonial state, and our diversity is our strength, and this and that. And it's just all the lies. We invert Jewish history to make blah blah blah. Khalistanis learn this topic. They learn to use victim and victimhood, victory press. Right? There's a big push in the West. The Sikh genocide, 1984. You know about the pogrom the Sikhs suffered in mostly Delhi. You could. What about the Hindus of Punjab? Yes, the Hindus of Punjab. I'm not going to admit context, but they're going to admit context. They're going to say and use the oppressor oppressed. India is the Hindu nationalist, right? Modi is, again, we have to use it. If you can't compare something directly to America, then you can't exist on the monolith. Everything must be 1960s America and Trump. So you have Modi, who is on the political right, which makes him a Trump, which makes him a dictator. Was he democratically elected? Yes. Does that matter? No, he's a dictator. Now, you go into 1984. Who's responsible for this? Mostly Congress. No, BJP. Were they in power? No. But you have the Khalistanis, Tim Uppal, Jagmeet Singh, all our Khalistanis are saying BJP committed the Sikh genocide, which they're calling it, in 1984. And, okay, why is this?
The narrative, in fact, Daniel, a few days ago, we saw that one legislator was, in fact, his agents were circulating pamphlets and trying to put across a theory that Kanishka bombing was allegedly done by India only. But you see that on the screen, these pamphlets distributed to reopen the Kanishka bombing case because they say that it was done by India. Now, it can't get more bizarre than this.
Well, what about the Hamas supporters who say October 7th was done by Israel, even though they filmed it? Again, it's the same thing. Hamas GoPro films their atrocities on October 7th, celebrates them, and then denies them and says, you did them. It's the same thing with these Khalistanis. Why do you have pictures of Tawinder Parmar? Why is Parmar in half the Gurdwaras in Canada have a picture of Shaheed Tawinder Parmar up in the Gurdwara for everyone to pay Tawinder Parmar? Now, I asked the question, okay, the Air India bombing, worst terrorist attack in Canadian history, it was actually done by Modi. Modi planted the bombs on the plane. Fine, that's okay. What does Tawinder Parmar do? Why is Parmar a hero? If Parmar is innocent and didn't blow up the Air India flight, why is Parmar a hero? What did he do if he didn't blow up the airplane? Why do you celebrate him? Why is he a martyr? What are his great accomplishments if he didn't blow up the airplane? Because as far as I'm concerned, the only thing he's ever done of significance in his life is be the mastermind of an airplane bombing plot,
which is one of the biggest terrorist attack. But lastly, Daniel, you spoke about the media, the way that it's covering these events, and it was a Canadian media organization that broke this story. But how is generally Canadian media covering this India-Canada story? Like, India has reiterated and asked for the extradition of Dalla. Is it being reported? How is it being treated by the media there?
I mean, it depends, right? So there's two different medias in our country. There's alternative media, and then there's mainstream media. And then within that, there's like the CBC, which is government run. So the CBC, which is, gets $1.4 billion from the Canadian government, is the propaganda outlet of the liberal media, is saying the liberal narrative, right? It's written by Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau and the World Sikh Organization. It's directly mainline their narrative. Then you have the rest of mainstream media, which is kind of setting that pace, which is sort of omitting the Indian narrative mostly, and then always sort of, pushing in. And then you have alternative media, like me and others, who are starting to cover like all sides of this. And you have alternative media, which is seeing the Khalistanis be bizarre lunatics and starting to pick up on this more. So your views on India, Canada, are kind of purely determined by what media you consume. If you're an alternative media, if you get it from like Twitter and Instagram and different YouTube channels you trust, you're probably getting a pretty balanced view. You probably see the Canada and the Indian side. And you would probably understand, like, okay, Canadian sovereignty is good. Like, I'm pro-Canada, but I also kind of understand Nijjar was a plumber, right? But if you watch CBC and you just get it like CBC, Toronto Star, that's your news diet. You're like, oh my God, Narendra Modi is running around my neighborhood about to steal all my Sikh activist friends who are just trying to do a diversity. So it depending on what world and how you consume your media, that probably will determine your opinions on Khalistan. But mainstream media is dying. So
absolutely. Daryl Bordman, thanks so much for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts. We're keeping a track of this story. Almost every day there's a new development to this India-Canada story. We'll keep a track of that. Thanks for joining, and thanks to our viewers for watching the Mojo Story.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.